I'm a hunter for the Vatican, but I don't hunt demons. My specialty? It's complicated. I handle the things that go bump in the night. The creatures from folklore the church decided long ago were better left forgotten. There's a department for it, buried deep in the archives, a name spoken only in whispers. The Congregatio Pro Creaturis Fabulosis, the Congregation for Mythical Creatures. It's my job to maintain the veil, that thin, fraying barrier between your world and the world of nightmares. My latest assignment dropped me in this ghost town in the heart of the Romanian Carpathians, a place the locals called Vatra Lupului, the Wolf's Hearth. The official report, classified level 4, blamed a pack of lycanthropes, werewolves. The official story was that the pack had gone feral and wiped the whole town off the map. But walking through the silent, snow-dusted streets, sifting through the carnage, I knew the report was dead wrong. The evidence just didn't add up. And whatever did this, it was far, far worse than any werewolf. The call came on a Tuesday. I was summoned to one of those sterile, soundproofed rooms in the Vatican sub-basements. My handler, a cardinal named Albrecht who looks more like a retired butcher than a prince of the church, slid a lacquered file across the polished table. "Vatra Lupului," he said, his voice a low gravel. "Wiped out. Our satellite drone flyover confirms 0 heat signatures. Total loss." I opened the file. The pictures were grim, even for me. Black and white aerial shots of a village clawed to pieces, roofs torn off, walls splintered. It looked like a hurricane had a personal vendetta against the place. The report was as concise as it was clinical. It detailed a Class 4 lycanthrope pack event, mentioned aggression beyond normal predatory behavior, and suggested a rapid, incurable madness. "Werewolves don't do this," I said without looking up. "Not like this. This is methodical, organized." I pointed to one of the photos. A spiral pattern, almost artistic, had been gouged into the town square. The bodies, or what was left of them, were arranged in that same spiral. A pack gone mad is chaos, frenzy. This is a statement. Albrecht steepled his fingers, his face unreadable. The Holy Alliance's intelligence from the region is adamant. Local legends, recent sightings, it all points to werewolves. They want us to go in, confirm the pack has moved on, and sterilize the area. Salt and burn. Standard procedure. I closed the file. Standard procedure is for standard threats. I'd hunted werewolves from the forests of Ontario to the Australian outback. They're territorial, violent, and bound by the moon. But they are, for lack of a better word, animals. This felt different. This felt intelligent, malicious. "What aren't you telling me, Your Eminence?" He sighed, a sound like stone grinding on stone. The town was built on sensitive ground, an old Dacian holy site. Later, a monastery was built over it. St. Jude's, patron saint of lost causes. The monastery was abandoned centuries ago. The locals, they were guardians of a sort. They kept a vigil. A vigil for what? Albrecht's eyes met mine. "The file contains everything the congregation has deemed relevant to your mission, Hunter. Your transport leaves in 2 hours. Go in, assess the situation, and report back. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. And for God's sake, be careful. The veil in that region is thin, especially now." The winter in Romania isn't your average cold. It seeps into your bones, a damp, persistent chill that no amount of clothing can keep out. As the chopper descended towards the coordinates, I saw Vatra Lupului with my own eyes. It was worse than the photos. A scar on the pristine white landscape of the Carpathians. A wound. My kit was standard issue. My rifle, a custom piece of Vatican engineering firing silver-jacketed rounds with a core of pressurized holy water and white ash. Jars of blessed salt, thermite grenades for cleansing, and my journal. But as I stepped out onto the frozen ground, the silence of the village pressing in on me, I had a sinking feeling my standard kit wasn't going to cut it. The first thing I noticed wasn't the destruction. It was the smell, or the lack of it. A town full of corpses should have that coppery tang of blood in the air, even in the freezing cold. But here, there was nothing. Just the clean, sharp scent of pine and snow. The air was sterile. Dead. I walked the main street, my boots crunching on ice and debris. The destruction was absolute, but it was also precise. Houses weren't just smashed. They were dismantled. Beams were snapped clean, stones from the foundations piled in neat, almost deliberate mounds. It was the work of immense strength, sure, but not some wild, uncontrollable rage. I knelt, running a gloved hand over a deep claw mark in a wooden doorframe. 5 distinct gouges, each as deep as my thumb. The wood around the edges was dark, almost charred, but not from fire. It felt dead, drained of all life. I scraped a sample into a vial. It crumbled into a dry, lifeless dust. Then I found the first body, or what the official report had classified as one, laid out in the grotesque spiral in the town square. But it wasn't mauled. No bite marks, no torn flesh. The corpse was desiccated. A husk. The skin was tight over the bones, gray and brittle, as if every drop of moisture had been violently sucked out of it. And all around it, clinging to the clothes and the frozen ground, was a fine, dark powder. It smelled of the grave. I took another sample. This was not werewolf work. Lycanthropes are creatures of flesh, blood, and fury. They feast, they tear, they leave a mess. This was something else. A predator that didn't just kill, it consumed. It drained its victims of their very essence. My radio crackled to life. Albrecht. Hunter, report. The initial assessment is wrong, I said, my voice low. This wasn't a werewolf pack. Explain. No silver casings, none. This was a village of guardians. They knew what lurked in these woods. If they were fighting werewolves, they would have used silver. There's not a single spent silver round in his whole town. They were up against something silver couldn't touch. Silence on the other end. I could almost hear the cardinal thinking. The state of the victims doesn't line up either, I continued. They're not eaten, they're hollowed out, and there's a residue everywhere. Grave dirt, from the smell of it. Old grave dirt. I walked towards the edge of the spiral, following its slow, clockwise pattern outwards from the center of the town square. It led me to the ruins of the old church. The steeple had been torn down, its bell lying half buried in the snow, cracked and silent. And there, daubed on the stone archway of the church door in what looked like dried blood, was a symbol. A circle with a jagged line through it, like a lightning bolt. An old, archaic symbol. A warning. I recognized it from one of the more obscure texts in the Vatican archives. The mark of a necromancer, a master of the undead. "Your Eminence," I said into the radio, "I think we have a much bigger problem. I'm looking at the mark of a strigoi." The line was quiet for a long time. When Albrecht finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a dread I had never heard from him before. "God help us," he whispered. "The seal is broken." The church was a tomb. The pews were overturned, the altar shattered. But it was here, sheltered by the stone walls, that I found what I was looking for: a survivor's account. Tucked beneath a fallen crucifix was a small, leather-bound diary belonging to the town's priest, Father Costin. His last few entries were scribbled in a trembling, frantic hand. November 28th, it began. The air grows cold. The livestock are restless. The old ones mutter that St. Andrew's Eve is near. They say the barrier between worlds thins on this night. I told them it's superstition, but I feel it too. A pressure in the air. A wrongness. I had to pause. He was talking about St. Andrew's night. In Romanian folklore, November 30th is when evil spirits, werewolves, and the undead are believed to roam free. Costin had written this 2 days before it all went down. He knew something was coming. I flipped to the next entry. The handwriting was more erratic. November 29th. They came from the forest. Not the wolves we know. These are larger, their eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. They move with a terrifying silence. They are not living beasts. Our silver bullets passed right through them. The blessed salt holds them back, but only for a time. They are testing us. They're intelligent. My blood ran cold. He wasn't describing werewolves, not living ones anyway. He was describing the pricolici, not men who turn into wolves, but the souls of the wicked dead who rise from their graves as giant wolves. They're undead. You can fight them with holy items, but a standard silver round? Useless. The final entry was barely legible. November 30th. God forgive us. They broke through. They're not acting on their own. I see him now, on the ridge, directing them. A tall figure, cloaked in shadow. His will is a palpable force. The pricolici are his hounds. He is a master, a strigoi. The old legends were true. Vatra Lupului was a prison. We were the wardens. He has broken the seal on the monastery of Sfântul Iuda. He seeks the heart of the mountain. The bodies, they are not being eaten. They are being used. He is building an army. He is... And that's where the entry ended. A final, desperate scrawl. Closing the diary, it all slammed into place. The strigoi are another dark stain in Romanian folklore. This one, a master powerful enough to command a pack of undead wolves, was an ancient threat. The organized destruction, the desiccated bodies, the grave dirt. It was a necromancer and his pack. The werewolf attack was a smokescreen, a brutal clearing of the board. The strigoi didn't want the village. He wanted what was underneath it. The old monastery, Sfântul Iuda, built over a place of ancient power. I looked out from the ruined church towards the mountains looming over the valley. Somewhere up there, a 500-year-old monster was putting the final pieces of a dark ritual into place. This wasn't a cleanup operation anymore. This was a hunt. I keyed my radio. Albrecht, it's a strigoi, a master commanding a pack of pricolici. The village was a blood sacrifice to break his prison. He's at the old monastery, Sfantul Yuda. He's after something called the Heart of the Mountain. The response was immediate, urgent. Hunter, your orders are to withdraw. I repeat, withdraw immediately. We will deploy a full inquisitorial team. This is beyond your operational parameters. With all due respect, Your Eminence, by the time your team gets here, it'll be too late. He's been planning this for centuries. He's in the final stages. I can feel it. I'm the only one on the ground. You're one man against a necromancer and his undead army, Albrecht roared. One is all it takes, I replied, checking the action on my rifle. If you do it right. I cut the comms before he could argue. He knew I was right. Bureaucracy moves at the speed of prayer. Monsters do not. I packed the priest's diary and started my ascent towards the monastery. The hunt was on. The climb to Sfantul Yuda was treacherous. The path was steep and slick with ice, the wind a constant howling assault. The higher I went, the darker and more twisted the forest grew. I moved slowly, methodically. I knew the Strigoi was aware of me. I was the wrench in his centuries-old machine. As I neared the monastery, the pressure in the air intensified, the feeling of immense power being gathered. The snow here was thinner, melted away in patches not by heat, but by sheer necrotic energy. The ground was littered with the bones of animals, all of them desiccated and hollowed out like the villagers below. I found a vantage point on an outcrop overlooking the monastery. It was a skeleton of stone arches and crumbling walls clinging to the mountainside. At its center, built over a gaping chasm that plunged into the mountain's depths, was the main chapel. And in front of it stood the Strigoi. He was tall and aristocratic, even in the tattered remains of 500-year-old finery. His skin was the color of parchment, stretched thin over sharp cheekbones. He wasn't breathing. He just stood there, his back to me, radiating absolute command. Arranged around him were the Prikolici, at least 24 of them. They were enormous, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen, with coarse, matted fur the color of grave dirt and eyes that burned like hot coals. The Strigoi was chanting in an ancient guttural language, full of crackling power. As he spoke, a faint, sickly green light began to pulse from the chasm. The heart of the mountain. Not a physical object, but a locus of raw energy where the veil was practically non-existent. He wasn't just drawing power from it. He was poisoning it. With that power, he could raise an entire army of the dead and tear the veil down for good. This was the truth of Vatra Lupului. The villagers weren't just guardians. They were a living seal. The Strigoi had used the Prikolici to butcher them, using their stolen life force to shatter the seal. I chambered around. A direct assault was suicide. The Prikolici's weakness is their master. Sever the head, the body falls. Simple. My target was the Strigoi. But what's the weakness of a 500-year-old necromancer? You can't just shoot them. You have to destroy their physical vessel and sever their connection to their power source. That meant destroying his body and sealing that chasm. I took stock of my gear. My rifle rounds were designed to disrupt an incorporeal form, to cause pain and break concentration. The thermite grenades burn hot enough to turn a stone monastery into molten slag. My plan formed. Desperate and brutal. I'd use the rifle to break his control over the Prikolici. While they were disoriented, I'd close the distance and use the thermite to collapse the chapel, burying the strigoi and sealing the chasm. It was a one-way trip. Even if I survived the blast, the collapse would take out half the mountainside. But it was the only way. I couldn't let him finish. I took a deep breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. I lined up the shot, placing the crosshairs on the center of the strigoi's back. "For the lost souls of Vatralupului," I whispered. And I pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked hard against my shoulder. The round shrieked through the air, a silver-white streak against the gray sky, and struck the strigoi square between the shoulder blades. There was no blood. Just a flash of brilliant white light and a high-pitched, tearing shriek of pure rage. His physical form flickered, turning translucent for a moment, and the chant broke. The effect on the Pricolici was instantaneous. Their master's control shattered. They stopped being a disciplined army and became what they truly were. A pack of confused, enraged phantoms, turning on each other with wild, unfocused eyes. That was my opening. I broke from cover, sprinting down the rocky slope towards the monastery. I had maybe 30 seconds before the strigoi reasserted his will. My boots skidded on ice and loose shale as I ran. I reached the edge of the chapel, my lungs burning. The strigoi was already reforming, turning his head slowly towards me. His face was a mask of ancient hatred, his eyes burning with cold green light. "Hunter," he hissed, his voice like dry leaves skittering across a tombstone. "You think your faith and your trinkets can stop me? I am eternal." "You're a parasite," I yelled back, pulling the pins on 2 thermite grenades. "And this is the cure." He laughed, a dry, rattling sound. He raised a hand, and black thorny vines shot up from the ground, wrapping around my legs and pulling me down. The Pricolici had stopped fighting. Their heads were all turned towards me. They began to advance. Pinned, surrounded. I had one last desperate move. I still had the grenades. I couldn't throw them at the chasm anymore, but the chapel was built on ancient, crumbling support arches. "You're right," I grunted, struggling against the vines. "I can't kill you, but I can bury you." I armed the grenades and jammed them into the base of the main support archway beside me. The strigoi's eyes widened in understanding. He lunged, not at me, but towards the chasm, trying to absorb the last of its power. The grenades went off with a deafening roar and a flash of incandescent white light. The thermite ignited, melting stone like wax. The ancient arch groaned, buckled, and then shattered. The entire roof of the chapel, tons of rock and consecrated stone, plunged downwards, taking the floor with it. The strigoi let out one last agonized shriek as he was pulled down into the abyss, buried under an avalanche of his own prison. The ground shook violently, and the chasm was sealed under a mountain of molten rock. The vines holding me dissolved to dust. The Pricolici, their master gone, simply ceased to be. They faded into black smoke and the lingering scent of old graves, leaving me alone in the sudden deafening silence. I lay there for a long time, gasping for air, my ears ringing. The monastery was gone, the mountain was scarred, but it was quiet. The oppressive energy that had choked the valley was gone. The veil was secure. For now. Hunting these creatures, understanding their lore and weaknesses. It's a lifetime's work. My journal is filled with stories like this. Countless tales of things that lurk just beyond the firelight. And there are always more to be told. My report to Albrecht was short. Threat neutralized. Target entombed. Vatra lupului cleansed. I left out the part about being buried alive and narrowly escaping being torn to shreds by an undead wolf pack. Some details are best left out of official records. They'll list the events at Vatra lupului as a geological anomaly, an unexplained earthquake. No one will ever know about Father Costin and the villagers who stood as silent wardens for centuries. No one will know their sacrifice, but I know. And I will remember. This job, it isn't about glory. It's about holding the line. It's about ensuring the stories in old books remain just that, stories. But as I packed my gear for the next assignment, a report of unusual tidal patterns off the coast of Scotland, I couldn't help but wonder. For every seal we reinforce, how many others are cracking? For every monster we hunt, how many more are learning to hunt us? The world is full of forgotten places and creatures far older than mankind, and they are all waiting